Listen, we've officially hit the part of the American empire's decline where the guy who's actually at the helm of the $30 trillion economy that we have here has the kind of diplomatic grace of a drunk dude at Applebee's who had too many Long Island iced teas. If you really want to know why the global supply chain is fractured and why American small businesses, in this case New Hampshire, are particularly getting hammered, then you have to look no further than Capitol Hill, this week especially. United States Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick, just a reviled piece of shit. He looks into the microphone and says that our greatest ally, our ally to the north, well, what used to be, they fucking hate us at this point, that they suck. And why? Well, because they're not putting American spirits on the shelves. That's the biggest gripe that this guy has. And that's just how petty, how misanthropic these kind of old, rich curmudgeons actually are. They're so out of touch with reality that they're willing to watch the world burn so they can have a successful sound clip and look cool to the escorts that they're buying at Mar-a-Lago. So yesterday he got grilled by New Hampshire Senator Jeanine Shaheen, and she's really just trying to bring him down to reality and show him the negative consequences of this kind of rhetoric.
We have a lot of businesses in New Hampshire, small businesses who work on both sides of the border. We have all those Canadian visitors who are not coming because of your comments and comments by the administration. How does that help our economy?
It is outrageous that Canada will not put U.S. spirits on the shelf. It is insulting.
It is.
And disrespectful to America that they won't
Absolutely.
even put...
And my husband has an interest in a company that has American spirits. And they won't do it because of the insults from this president and comments like yours.
Let's just look at the math here for a second, because in my experience talking with you guys over here, our neighbors to the north, you guys have pretty much completely boycotted anything that has to do with America, rightfully so at this point. If our country is going to do everything that it possibly can to destabilize your country, to bend the knee, then you have every right to not just be pissed off at us, but completely segregate yourself from any kind of trade policies with us. Now, with that said, it's kind of impossible to do at this moment. You guys are all informed, you're aware of that. And the national tourism economy has been hit particularly hard by Canadians just opting out and just traveling domestically, going to Europe, going to Asia, going to, well, not Cuba anymore, but going to Mexico. But New Hampshire itself has lost 30% of Canadian tourism. 30%. That's an industry in New Hampshire that supports 70,000 jobs. And those families, they have rents to pay, they have mortgage to pay, they have bills to pay, they have families to feed. The local small businesses that depend on that kind of tourism, they're just absolutely bleeding out. And this isn't something that's just a one-off this year. This is going to continue. Even if Canadians decide to embrace the United States again once President Trump is out of office, or Americans actually gather their balls together and do something about this outrageous shit that our current administration is really forcing on the world, Canadians aren't coming back. In fact, year after year, we're going to see a decline from Canadian tourism, especially as they get leadership there that's actually competent, unlike what we have in the States, and they rally around the flag even more and realize the kind of destruction that they're able to bring to the table to the American economy just by boycotting a vacation here. But while all these families in New Hampshire are dealing with the economic fallouts of Howard Lutnick saying that Canada sucks, the Commerce Secretary, this bastard's going to sit there and throw a temper tantrum because Ottawa's not going to prioritize the distribution of Jack Daniels. And this is why the sheer disconnect between these politicians who were appointed and not voted into office is so breathtaking, because he's literally worried about restocking the liquor cabinet while the entire house that is the US economy burns down around us. But the thing is here, this isn't just about a drop in tourism. It's not just about Jack Daniels. It's not just about Hennessy. It's not just about Jim Beam. The political theater is just a distraction from a massive structural policy failure that's happening behind the scenes right now. We're coming up on the CUSMA review. That's Canada, US, Mexico. CUSMA. And normally, our allies, they sit down and negotiate new trade policies between our nations, but not with this administration. You want to come to Donnie T's table, you got to pay a price. You got to pay a cover fee like it's a shitty club, and you're a college student who's just trying to get your beak wet on $2 Mai Tais. So they're literally demanding upfront massive concessions from Mark Carney. And Mark Carney just flat out says, no, this is not going to happen. The mandate that he's gotten from the Canadian people is to really stick it to the US at this point and make sure that Canada isn't dependent on the US as much independence as they can possibly have from the dual relationship, the integrated trade policies that we have. This administration is treating the top export market for 35 different US states like a mob underling who has to pay the price before they can actually talk to the boss. But like I said, Mark Carney, he looked at them yesterday and he just said no. He said, the US doesn't dictate terms anymore. That's not how this is gonna work. And here's the empire delusion that really kicks in. The United States genuinely believes that the world has nowhere else to go. The American people have no idea of the 20 different trade agreements that Mark Carney's made within the past few months. They think that if America decides to tighten the screws on these countries, they have no other choice but to pay the fees and bend the knee to our administration, our would-be king here in the States. And that's why Howard Lutnick is really throwing a temper tantrum. It's not anything to do with dairy. And truly, it's not about the liquor. It's just the fact that Canada isn't bowing to the entry fee. Instead, Carney's looking on taking on Chinese-made electric vehicles that, if moved into the United States, would absolutely disrupt the auto industry and the auto monopolies that we have in the United States that Americans in general can't pay for. Would Americans, if given the choice, pay $25,000 to $35,000 for a really well-made Chinese electric vehicle? Or would they rather pay for a Honda CR-V that I've had to take into the shop 3 times and only has 35,000 miles on it? Give me the Chinese-made EV. Because the Hondas that are being made in Georgia, they're just not worth it, not at all. And that's where the fee comes in, because the US is trying to bully Canada, but Canada is essentially called the bluff. And the people in Washington, D.C., these technocrats, these oligarchs, and these absolute tyrants, they're having an absolute freak out because they realize that they don't hold all the cards in the deck anymore. So the third order of effects here, how this actually hits the people, because the billionaires, they're going to get on TV, they're going to have their little tough guy moments, their sound clips where they get to play the titans of industry. Meanwhile, a guy named Gary from New Hampshire who has a fleet of unpaid Yamaha snowmobiles and is relying on Canadian tourism to actually run his business, he's about to go bankrupt. He's going to have to pull his kids from school and move to somewhere a little further south. Maybe he can get a job in one of these rising factories that this administration keeps talking about. But that's the ghost economy. That's the phantom economy. That doesn't even exist. There's a reason why people in our country now are putting out 1,000 applications and getting 12 interviews for the same company and still not getting the job. It's because the American economy is absolutely crumbling, and it doesn't matter how the people in Washington, D.C., the billionaires want to lie about it. Reality is reality. And though they can lie to the face of the American people are the ones who are actually facing this nightmarish economy that we're in. We have an administration right now who are always talking about how they're the best deal makers, the best and greatest policies like no other president, right? Donald Trump's going to sit up there and say that he's a better president than George Washington, than Abraham Lincoln, than FDR, than Teddy Roosevelt. He's going to say all this shit. Well, at the same time, yeah, he's made $4 billion, but the rest of the people in the country have paid thousands of dollars in consequence of the tariffs that he's charging to other countries. To my Canadian audience that's watching right now, because I know a lot of you guys are on this channel now, which is fun. I like you guys a lot. I have a great appreciation for Canada at this point. I get it. You're sitting up there watching this alleged superpower flail around and throw tariffs like a toddler throwing a tantrum in a grocery store. You're exhausted, right? Your resentment towards this administration is completely valid and justified. You're watching incompetence in real time, but at least you're on the other side of the border. We're actually living in the middle of this incompetence. And let me tell you, it's embarrassing. But to the Americans that are watching, you need to pay very close attention to what happens when you try to bully the global market. The world does not end at the US border. When Washington, D.C. fractures trade corridors, the politicians do not pay the price. It is you, the average person in the working class. The person who's actually wondering if they have to cut meat out from their diet just so they can actually pay rent. When Canada retaliates, which they are, or when the supply chain decouples because we demanded an entry fee, the cost of goods are going to go vertical. The cost of groceries are going to go vertical. The cost of energy is going to go vertical. People in the United States have no idea how much we actually get from Canada. So for the president to get up there and essentially say Canada exists off of the graciousness of our own country, it's beyond insulting. It speaks to a level of delusion that shouldn't be allowed in public. And the fact that it's supported by a very dwindling population, almost hitting under 30%, really just shows that the entire country at this point, whether you're on the right, whether you're on the left, is completely done. If you're an American, you need to stop expecting these people the next day, they're going to wake up and decide to negotiate in your best interest. They don't care about your paycheck. They view you as livestock, a kind of economic collateral damage that's necessary for the stock market to keep going up. They're expecting us as the American people, those who have to live in the fallout of this new modern dystopia, to just adapt to the reality that the people running this simulation have absolutely no idea what they're doing. And truth be told, nobody in the United States should really be surprised by what's actually happening in the United States under this administration. This is the fulfillment of all the real promises that they've actually made. You know, if you actually read between the lines and you were on the right side of the IQ bell curve, you could have saw this shit coming. And that's why it's nice to see so many people from MAGA who voted for Trump 3 times in a row come on over to the side of sanity. But at the same time, there's a lot of resentment towards the people who supported this shit up until last week just because it started to affect their gas prices. So tell me what you think in the comment section. Like and subscribe as always. Food for thought. Take care.